Have you ever tried really hard and then been disqualified anyway? Do you ever not listen to someone trying to help you? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmet, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumours, all with almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here is carefully researched for hours to make sure it is totally founded in logic, reason, and truth. Or not. Who knows?
I have to say, our questions at the top of the episode today feel a lot more like the start of a therapy session than a F1 podcast. Do you ever get in your own way of somebody trying to help you?
Do you feel that the universe is against you despite the fact that you put in time and energy and effort? How does this make you feel?
And you get $30 million a year just for being who you are?
It's not enough.
It's too much.
It's not enough.
Well, Dominic, I have some good news for you with our Have We Got Anything Right?
Oh?
Together, we got 50% of our predictions correct.
Beautiful, because it's a team effort.
It's a team effort.
Unlike every other Formula One team who hasn't realised that it's a team effort yet.
Right.
So, I made a beautiful, shocking, amazing prediction that clearly was going to happen, that one of the rookies was going to bin it again in qualifying, or even the race. And, I mean, I suppose one of them did kind of bin it, but not catastrophically. So I get a big fat 0 for that one. And then I predicted that McLaren would win by 20 seconds, but it was unclear which one. It was getting in that direction, but no. And then Lewis scores a point because of luck, because of a rookie binning it. And again, I failed.
Meanwhile, I had Dominic forgets it's a sprint race, which I got a lovely text on Friday that said, oh crap, it's a sprint, isn't it? And it's like, yep, it's chalk up a point for me. A different winner from the sprint versus the race. Yeah, we had Lewis and then Oscar, so that was good. And then Lewis bounces back, beating Charles. Given they only technically raced against each other once this weekend, Lewis did.
Even if you account for the thing that we have yet to discuss, would you still say that that's true?
Given with how we score these sometimes and how well Lewis raced in the sprint race and how I think Ferrari screwed him over in the main race, yes, I want the point.
Okay, good point. I'll fully accept that. Yes, it was curious. But before we get into the race, shall we see if anything happened between them? And it was only 1 week, so there was a very limited opportunity for true drama. But let's see what we got.
But Ferrari released, I don't know how you would describe this, amazing merch. Dominic, you're a collector of hats. Are you going to be getting the Ferrari champagne hat?
If I was not off the wagon, on the wagon, whichever it is that I've not purchased any hats and I'm continuing not to purchase any, if I was purchasing them, I would have bought this so quickly. Which I think would have been perfect. I think it has such a lovely name. It is a champagne-style hat.
With some lovely white streaks on it that have set the internet alive.
I think I should include this as a link to in the show notes, because without the visual aid, it just doesn't have the same impact.
I think the shorts are a bit too much, though.
Wait, there were shorts?
There were shorts.
What? I'm sorry. I thought it was the hat, and that was all we got.
No.
What were they thinking?
I don't know. I'll drop it in our text messages.
Oh, come on. You got to give me the link to this, because it's not on the official website.
Maybe they pulled it for good reasons. But they did still make the shorts, and there was definitely an advertisement with the shorts.
I cannot believe that they did that. I can't believe they did shorts. I can't believe they did the hat, and that was bad enough, but the shorts, like, what were they thinking?
This is one of those, like, sometimes every committee needs, like, a 12-year-old boy.
Yes, 100%.
Baseball is famous for this with the new era caps.
I heard about the newest controversy that what was it? One of the Texas teams with the new style baseball hats basically said, what was it? Was it Spanish for prostitute?
It was tetas, which I'm not sure. But I have Google Translate. Oh, no. Just a different word for boobs.
Oh, okay. Well, that's less exciting.
But last year there was the Oakland A's hat that looked like ass.
Figuratively, it spelt it out. It had a
it spelt it out because it was like a they called it like a shadow hat. So you had like the A apostrophe S, and then with like how it shadowed, it just looked like it said ass, and they quickly like pulled that one as well. The Houston Astros hat looks like assholes.
A chocolate starfish.
Yeah. The Anaheim Angels hat pretty much looks like it says anal, which, also fun. Or anals. So, there's a lot of this in merchandise of people trying to be cool, and maybe you should, like, take a step back and show it to, like, a 12-year-old before it goes too far.
And you'd hope that in the corpus of the people working on these products, there would be at least one teenager that you can show it to. Like, somebody has to have a child that is of an appropriate age. It's very baffling. And now I'm going to be deciding for the next 2.5 hours which parts of the previous segment I'm going to bleep out. And I may just choose to just let's roll with it.
Welcome to our Patreon.
Yes. So yes, terrible merchandise, which is disappointing. So
yeah. It was definitely good for a laugh this week, though, in the sense of, did they really do that? And they really did do that.
They really did do that.
And I am mostly surprised that you have not bought it yet.
I'm resisting it. I'm resisting very hard.
It's got to be a collector's item, though. I mean, how many other jizz hats are out there?
I don't know.
Since we're already worried about bleeping, might as well just go for it.
Might as well just go for it. Maybe I'm edging towards purchasing it. Anyway, what else
I've already
happened?
purchased it.
And what else happened in this week's Between Race drama?
Well, there was some air freight woes of one of the planes that was going to fly, McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, and Aston Martin, I think is who it was, to Shanghai.
It was not Ferrari, because I remember you making a comment that it was a good opportunity for Ferrari to take the lead.
Okay. Yes, that's true. Mercedes, maybe? Anyway, there were 4 teams whose cars did not make it until very late because there was some technical issues with an airplane. But hey, at least they weren't flying through Heathrow.
No, a good job that, because it was week to week, a bunch of people weren't trying to go back home to the UK, otherwise they'd been in trouble.
Yeah, I have to imagine they're on chartered flights out of like East Midlands or something, not going in and out of
Luton,
Heathrow. Yeah,
true.
God, that sounds like terrible if you'd have to go through Heathrow every single time.
Oh yeah, dear God, no. You wouldn't want to do that.
Which, dear God, also the amount of airports around London that say they're London that aren't London, like holy crap.
Oh yeah, it's like it's the Ryanair trek. It's like you can fly Ryanair to Stockholm. It turns out it's 120 kilometers from Stockholm.
To be fair, Stockholm Arlanda is not close to Stockholm either. You have to take like a 20-minute bullet train to get to it.
Oh yeah, that's kind of cheap.
Which is very fun to be traveling at 180 kilometers an hour on a train to an airport.
I mean, Heathrow to London is like an hour on the train.
Yes, but London City to London is right out the door.
True. That's very true. It should be noted that as part of this delay for the freight, the affected teams were allowed an additional 8 hours without a curfew enforcement. So, they did the right thing.
And also, this was great for some of those teams' work-life balance because they just got to hang out at a Shanghai hotel for a while and maybe explore a little bit of Shanghai. It looked like they were actually having a good time.
Oh, interesting. I did not see any of that coverage.
Yeah, there was one, I forget who the reporter was, but they were talking about how it's like, yeah, they got nothing to do, so they're just hanging out. And it's like, actually could be kind of fun to be, like, because from what it sounds like, being an F1 team employee who's on the road sounds absolutely terrible, where you don't actually see the places you go, you just see, ooh, this hotel, and ooh, this pit garage. So, like, actually having a couple days to be like, oh, we have nothing to do. Let's go look at something. Like, sounds nice.
Enjoy the local cuisine, enjoy the local nightlife. It seems like fun.
Yeah.
You apparently saw James Vowles doing something about Carlos Sainz and his whoopsie.
Yeah, I sent this to you, I think. Essentially,
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, James had a really good explanation, and I love when teams do this, of like why things happened the way they were. And it's really just a combination of like, well, they've never had, a safety car in the wet on like this specific situation, and they realized that maybe their torque deployment wasn't the best.
Oh, yeah, because it was in a safety car mode on deployment.
It was in a safety car mode that I don't think they've generally anticipated being in the wet, or maybe not setting it up also to be in a wet condition, but they were in a safety car mode, and Carlos had his foot constant, but because he shifted and then like how the engine mapping and torque went, he spun. So something for them to look at when they're in a safety car mode. Which also seems weird to me that like they have some sort of battery deployment while in a safety car mode. You think you'd just be fully on charging, because I feel like that's what would have caused the torque. But then again, I'm not a Williams engine mapping engineer, so I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that being part of the way that they deploy it when the gear changes, but it seems very strange. Maybe the turbo just dumped or something.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was good. I remember it now, and I did enjoy it, and it kind of gave a bit of saving face for Carlos after what was basically a terrible race that made him look like Logan Sargent.
But it's another great ticket on the Giro Atlassian backlog of things that Williams needs to work on and fix. And I also think it's great when teams say like, oh yeah, this is how it went wrong, and we're going to fix it, when it's like not necessarily something that proprietary that another team will copy. But and I don't know, maybe another team will look at it and go, have we checked our own safety car mapping? And it's worth looking into. Like
that's it. You expose to others all the terrible mistakes, just like you might with a security vulnerability. You expose it so everybody can go, oh, I should have fixed that. Oh, I should.
Yeah.
So, George was seen in the warm embrace of our favorite, most honest, highest esteemed member of the paddock, Flavio Briatore.
I was going to say there are about 3 options there.
Who would be the other 2?
I would go Christian Horner.
Okay, I can see that.
Of our other highly esteemed, most representable members of the paddock. And then if Gunter Steiner's in the paddock, he might be there as well. Yeah.
Okay. Or maybe Zach Brown.
Definitely Zach Brown. Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to narrow it, but there apparently I forgot about F1.
Yeah. Like Toto and Susie, but only according to the FIA.
True. Fair point. I do think that this meeting is very clear that it means Max is going to Mercedes next year.
Maybe. Is his contract out at the end of this year's season?
No, 2028.
Oh yeah, he's contracted forever. But geez, that F1, that Red Bull car. Ooh, we'll get to it.
Oh, yeah. It does raise the question though. If you're George, why are you going to Alpine? Like, surely there are better options for you.
I don't think I think George is just keeping all of his options open in the most George way possible.
Pressing the flesh.
Yeah. Because we really don't know what the new rule set's going to bring in the order for 2026. Oh, that was some drama that came up. Did you see about the engines?
No, but hang on. But do remember Alpine's getting Mercedes engines.
Right. So that was a whole thing. But, and historically, Mercedes screwed the last rules. So they haven't been on great form under this new rule set. So if they take another step backward, maybe George is looking. And George is also only on a 1+1 deal. So,
yes, he's going to look around. You got to watch out for Kimi showing him up.
Yeah, which doesn't seem to be happening yet.
But you said there was some engine drama, and I think this is
about...
I
kind of caught a glimpse of this. I don't have a source or anything, but I think I saw something about the FIA considering keeping these engines for 2026, and all the team principals were like, "You can't do that. Like, we've already gone down this path. We've already spent so much working on developing these new powertrains and stuff. Like, you can't just." We're already on a course we're developing the 2026 cars around these engines. You can't just change it now. You can't do this.
Well, this was specifically in the context of switching to V10s and dropping the entire V6 hybrid blah, 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 blah. They were going to go to V10s. And I'm pretty sure you can't do that and slap a V10 in the same size box. That would totally destroy the entire balance of the car at this point.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're referring to, but it looks like they were totally thinking of abandoning this engine formula, which I think you can be fine going to V10s if you go to an alternate fuel source, not petrol, something sustainable.
That was the other part of what was being rumored, is that they were going to go fully sustainable in a V10, and if they couldn't do it in time for 2026, which seems very unlikely, they were going to foreshorten the 2026 regulations to either 2 or 3 years, and blah, 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 blah. I get the nostalgia for, V10 engines, but I feel like somebody needs to come up with a better story. We have decided that we're not going to do the V6 with battery thing because X, Y, and Z, and the V10 will be better because of ABC. And I feel like at the moment it's just yeah, man, I like the old days. The old days were great. Let's go with the old days.
Well, I think there's an interesting point here with kind of what is F1 and what is F1 all about. And, there's always been the concept of race on Sunday, sell on Monday sort of stuff. And that's why you want people or different manufacturers in the sport. That's why manufacturers want to be in the sport, because you can do some trickle down engineering of like, oh, hey, we learned how to do this in F1. Let's now see if we can actually market it on our road cars. Something I think Honda maybe did the best out of anybody, because they actually, and maybe Toyota, because they actually sell everyday cars rather than like Ferrari. But I think now you've gotten to a point where there's a lot of eyeballs on F1. Daily driving automotive is not really headed in the same direction as Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the way there is almost like Formula AI, in a sense of like what sort of automated driver can you create with a car, which so far in the testing we've seen looks absolutely terrible, which is also kind of fun. But it would be interesting to see like how well you could program a driver bot and things like that. And it seems like a good time to. I saw a story on the internet of some freshman who won a computer science programming competition to make a poker bot, and they had like 48 hours to do it. And because he's a freshman and didn't know too much, he just programmed his bot to always go all in. And he ended up winning because he freaked out all the other bots, because it's like, oh my gosh, the thing's going all in. He must have incredible cards, and they'd all just fold. So he just won by always going all in. So but it's the perfect example of poker. Of you don't play your hand, you play your opponents, and he played the opponents by just going all in. So I would love to see somebody just write an AI card that's like always dive bomb and just like watch all the other cars get out of the way to avoid the collision.
I love it. It's so true though. There's a lovely microcosm there. I love that.
Yeah, I think that would be like an interesting support series to Formula One. But if Formula One is not going to be any sort of
trickle down
development platform for the daily automotive, then yeah, let's throw some V10s in there, and let's do something with sustainable fuel, because I think sustainable fuel is that method of like that's something that regular manufacturers could be in, because let's be honest, there's only a finite amount of battery material out there to be made, and currently I don't think we're doing a great job of recycling it. So
one of the other comments that came in with the V10 and the motivation was, by dropping the battery and dropping the turbo, you can get a bunch of people who make engines but are only sufficiently good at making engines rather than all the turbo, all the other complexities that go into it. And this was actually part of a longer term plan to break the hegemony of the car engine manufacturers, because now you can have another team come in and Cosworth or Ford,
a tuning company, for instance,
can go make the equivalent of what's the Corvette one, like the LS7. Like, it's an engine and it's a crate engine, and you can go do other things to it. And this was part of their motivation, which I actually think is very reasonable. But again, you can't be 7-8 months from the start of the season and decide that you're going to change your engine formula.
Yeah. And if you're going to do it, I think sustainable fuels is the way to go, because at least you're trying to move something forward. And yeah, I think it'd be interesting. And also then maybe you get the high revving V10s back that people love to scream about.
The other piece of between race drama, which is not on the list, is it's very depressing. Eddie Jordan passed away, and so the little leprechaun of the paddock is no longer going to be leprechauning his way around and making suspicious statements and being a good proxy for Bernie.
Yes, we'll
Bernie
Eccleston. Yeah, we'll need a new spice monger on the grid.
Yes, and maybe it can be Christian Horner when he gets kicked out of Red Bull because the car's crap this year.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he and David Coulthard were good buds, right?
They what? Did you hear you didn't? What was it? Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Covering Perez, and they didn't cover Perez, was barely in it. But there was this audio clip of Christian Horner talking to David Coulthard with Christian Horner saying, "Yeah, I don't know, Perez is really not very good. I'm pretty sure anybody could drive it better." And then David Coulthard said, "Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could drive it better." And I was like, "Oh, that is throwing some shade."
Let's put David back in the car. The grid needs that chin.
Oh yeah, I'd love that. We talk about the rookies, and we want to rotate rookies and give more people an opportunity. I think there is another aspect of when you get to the end of the season and everybody's basically locked in position. There's no point in racing around anymore. bring in some of the old timers, the retired ones, put them on, like, do sprint races with them, half the race because they won't be able to do the full one because the neck's not big enough. I'd love that. That'd be quite fun.
Well, I think they talked about doing like rookie sprint races at some point in time, in a sense of trying to get a third driver in there. Yeah, we
should get veteran rookie races.
Yeah, race 2 cars, 1 rookie, 1 veteran.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah,
love it. Speaking of people with needing jobs, shall we see if anybody still has a job this week?
Yeah, why not?
Let's start with the second one. You've placed Fernando Alonso on the watch list?
I mean, the dude's had 2 DNFs in 2 races.
Well, one of those was not his fault.
Sure. And I'm sure if you talk to Fernando Alonso, the other one's somehow not his fault as well.
Duh.
Yeah. To be fair on this one, I don't think this is so much as Aston Martin would sack him as much as, do I really want to keep doing this?
Yeah, I do. I do feel there's a certain hint with Fernando in that at this point.
Yeah, that like I think the writing might be on the wall for, maybe 2026 it's a good car, but to be honest, Lance is looking a little better than Fernando these days, which is not great if you're Fernando.
It's unacceptable. We can't take Stroll off the watch list. I mean, he's always on the watch list, but
not this week.
He's doing pretty good the last two races in a row.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things of if you're starting to be built by the Nepo or beat by the Nepo baby, and you're just not finishing races. Like, if this sort of trend continues, I could see Fernando being gone at the summer break. Let's be honest. Like, would you want it? Like, he's 43, 44, oldest guy on the grid by a lot.
Yeah.
Like, at some point in time, it's just time to hang it up, bud. Or maybe he goes away for IndyCar or for the Indy 500 and never comes back.
Oh, if he succeeded in the Indy 500 just by happenstance, he would do that. He'd be like, "I'm done now. I've got the Triple Crown." So,
yeah.
Okay.
We're only like a month, or a week, or 2 weeks away. If Japan doesn't go his way, I wouldn't be surprised if we suddenly hear about Fernando trying to get into the Indy 500.
Yeah. But related to that, I have had this brain thought, and it's connected to the other person who's on the watch list.
Liam
Lawson.
So Max actually came out and said, I think after the sprint race, I'm not sure before qualifying or not, that he actually thinks Liam would be faster in the Racing Bulls.
Yes.
Because that car is so hard to drive. And I had this in Spicy Takes, but I'm gonna go here and put it here as well. I think Red Bull actually needs to keep Liam in the car. After the race, there is a rumor going around that Liam's already out, Yuki's going to be in for Japan, and Colapinto's going to be in the Red Bull, which also, hey, Jack Doohan, great way to save your seat, sacrifice the Kiwi. I'm sure Australians will be very happy about that. But I think we've talked about this before, of Max hides any problems with that car because he is such a generational talent. Mm-hmm. And you almost need Liam in the car to help you develop the car, because Max can drive pretty much anything you give him. If the problem of the car is balance, work with Liam and figure out how you need to balance that car out. Because if you give Max a well-balanced car, we've seen what he can do in 2023. So I think, despite Liam's absolute struggles,
it was abysmal. It's not a struggle, man. He was not bad in the Racing Bull.
Hey, he was classified higher than both Ferraris this weekend in the race.
Let's save that. We don't want to ruin the spice here. We're going to spend at least 3.5 hours banging on about that. You're saying that you should keep him in the car because he's so bad that if you can make him passable, you'll have a better car.
No, the thing is, I don't think he's that bad. We saw him in the Racing Bulls last year, doing a decent job. Or even then, even if you do swap into Yuki, you got to commit to having a driver in that car long term to help develop it, because as great as Max is, he's not helping you develop the car. He's not helping it make it better. He's just driving the wheels off it as best he can because he's Max.
I feel for Liam, but there is also an attitude that he's shown in certain interviews, and you kind of saw a little bit of it in the Drive to Survive. And I know it's Drive to Survive. But he's got a bit of arrogancy about him, and I do wonder whether that is not helping him in this context. He's like, no, I've made it to the Red Bull, I can just drive it. And then he can't. And then it is difficult to drive, but he's unwilling to, I don't know, do what he needs to do to be able to drive it better, because he's really bad.
Yeah, and I think I saw he made some sort of comment like in regards to Yuki of like, well, I beat Yuki in the lower formulas. Like, I'm more deserving of the Red Bull seat than that. But the amount of times we've seen somebody, like, how many F2 champions are currently, like, racing well in Formula 1? Like...
Oscar?
Okay. But you... Was Oscar an F2 champion?
He was.
He was, that's right. But we've also seen, like, a bunch of people who were, like, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 in F2, not the F2 winners, but a decent showing in F2, get to F1, and like just because the cars drive differently, because you have power steering versus trying to just muscle the track around the car, they actually go faster in Formula 1. And then, you have Mick Schumacher, who was blowing up the Formula 2 series, and now he's gone.
Yeah, he's driving in WEC.
There are F2 champions who have continued to do well in Formula 1, but there's also a laundry list of F2 champions who just are 2 years and done, if they even make it 2 years.
Yep. I think that's a problem for F2, to be brutally honest.
Yeah, I think it's also, we've talked sometimes about, like, how do we get women into Formula 1, because there are some women in the lower categories. And I think it is time to talk about putting power steering in F2 and F3 cars, because that is one thing that the women say that is just a little harder, because, women just don't put on muscle the same way that men put on muscle, and having to fight the cars more. Well, in Formula 1, you get the power steering. So it'd be interesting to see if that levels the field at all.
I highly recommend you take a listen to the BBC's Checkered Flag podcast from 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks. They did a special hour episode about women in motorsport and F1, and they had Abby Pulling and Susie Wolf and, oh Lord, I've forgotten the lady's name. She's the Alpine a driver advisor who was really good in W Series, and I've forgotten them. But they had a long conversation. They talked about power steering, and the conclusion was the ladies who have driven it said, I don't care about the power steering. The power steering is not a problem for me. But they say there are lots of other interesting problems. Seats being shaped.
You mean the lack of power steering?
Correct. They're like,
yeah, okay.
They've gotten into cars that don't have power steering, and they're like, oh, I just need to bulk up my arms and it's fine. And the one they said that was the driver said that was more of a challenge for them was actually putting the pressure on the brake pedal. That was something they actually found really hard to improve for reasons they didn't quite go into, versus that you can just do some more arm exercises, you can fix it, but putting the weight on the pedal apparently is a lot harder, which I was kind of surprised at. So,
especially considering the joke in weightlifting is women can just immediately like load up squats and deadlifts compared to like bench press. So yeah, it is funny.
Yeah. Definitely worth a listen on that topic if you'd like to go deep on it.
And speaking of women in motorsport, my social media feed this week for some reason was inundated with Michelle Mouton clips from rallying in the 80s.
Oh, interesting.
Which, yeah. If you've never seen clips of her rallying in the 80s, she could drive. Holy crap.
To close out the Liam thing, but tie it back to your Fernando comment, Fernando retires halfway through the season for the reasons that you have mentioned. Yuki, on the Honda ticket, gets put into the Aston to get in with the team so he can drive in 2026 with the Honda engine, freeing up the seat at RB so Liam can come down, Colapinto can go in, and Isaac can go up to the big boy Red Bulls.
I think the better strategy is you just keep Max in the Red Bull and you run 3 Racing Bulls cars.
Yeah. Or put Max in the Racing Bull.
Yeah, that car doesn't look bad at this point in time. I'm very curious if he's actually faster than in the Red Bull.
That is the one unknown we have about Max. Is that
how quick would he be in that Racing Bull car?
How quick he would be in any other car. And so if he's driving around an unstable car that's very difficult to get the best out of and nobody else can drive it, what happens if you put him in, I don't know, the Mercedes, which is maybe not great this year, but maybe he'd be like 40 seconds down the road.
It's one interesting thing is we talk about putting Yuki in the seat. Is Yuki's put that RB like in the top 10 twice now so far on pole? And if Yuki is suddenly outside the top 10, we got to put Max in the Racing Bull.
Yeah, I agree.
Like that's where it goes. Yeah. Anyway, there was a
recap?
sprint race. Yeah,
Yeah, there was a sprint race.
it was fine.
Yeah, it was all right. Apart from, it was amazing. It was the greatest race of the season so far because the great Lord Almighty, Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton, he put it on pole by a tiny amount by him and Max.
And then he continued to just run away with it as Max ate up his tires.
Because apparently he basically cheated because he ran the car lower in the sprint race and he then destroyed his skid block. But because the race was shorter, it was okay. Not to telegraph what may or may not happen later, and you'll find out why this is an important fact.
Fair
but
enough.
also everybody said that the only reason he managed to nurse his tires was because he was out front and had nobody making them warm, and he wasn't really that very good.
Sure, but I mean, you look at that McLaren once again in the hands of Lando Norris. When it is in traffic, he cannot get past anybody.
Yeah, Oscar did a really good job in traffic catching up on keeping it because he was third, I think. Right?
Oscar had an amazing weekend.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so Lewis, greatest thing in the world. First win for Ferrari, only 2 races in. So,
in a sprint race.
In a sprint race, but you know.
That's the first sprint race Ferrari has ever won.
Is it the first sprint race Lewis has ever won, I think, too?
Brazil?
No, he didn't win, he came 5th. Because that's when they used the sprint race to set you for the race grid.
That's right, that was silly.
Yeah, it was silly. Yes, so Lewis, amazing. I don't think we need to talk anymore. Do you want to end the episode? We'll just call it there.
Yeah, nothing else really to say. So speaking about Max having the unstable car, there was a great, which I know it's an overlay, but it's like a telemetry from the car, and they put it on the track, and they kind of show who was faster where and everything else. I don't know how much of this is just the editing or how much is just from the telemetry of the car, but if you look at it, Lewis is so much smoother, and Max is having to make all these micro adjustments and stuff throughout, so it's just leading more into the fact of that Red Bull is sometimes undrivable. Yeah,
it did look a bit spicy, for want of a better term.
And going to the race, Max lost positions on the start, several, and that kind of screwed up his whole race.
Yep. Surprising for Max.
Yeah, normally he has really good starts.
And I don't even think at that point that's so much about the car. I think that's just, he was in, what position was he in?
6th for a while, finished 5th.
Yeah. But where did he qualify?
I think he qualified 4th.
Yeah, that was something like 4th, and so he
qualified
went
4th.
backwards. So that was quite surprising.
Yeah,
but but then he kept it together and didn't whine too much.
No, I think he was. Well, but to be fair, we didn't hear much from him, so we don't know how much he was whining.
True, because of the editorialization of the radio messages, which is about creating drama, and Ferrari's very upset.
But GP was urging him on during the end of the race and talking about how, hey, you're faster here, you get the tires. Which, if that Red Bull does chomp tires, somehow at the end of the race, it came alive on low fuel on the tires. And I don't know if that's just down to Max or Max knowing it was going to chomp tires and everything going towards a one-stop and just trying to save more than everybody else. But it's just, it wasn't the best weekend for Max, but it was also at the same point in time, oh yeah, Max is a really good racing car driver.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
I want to talk about Ferrari, but I think we should just save that till the end.
Yep.
The drivers that did the two-stop did not work at all. The two-stop just, it was as lauded as this great savior of the race. It's going to be a two-stop, and it was just hang the one-stop out to dry, which I think is honestly a problem with tires in Formula One right now as it all is how is the two-stop never faster?
The reason I think you get these one-stops, and I agree they're so frustrating, is that everybody's bunched up this whole that we want closer racing. But we've created closer racing that there's no opportunity for doing something radical, usually. Because everybody's bunched up. And so if you stop, you're going to end up 45 places behind. And then you're going to have to come through it all over again. And it's not going to work. And so everybody just waits. They're I've got to do my mandatory pit stop now. I'm just going to wait. And everybody else is getting crap. And I'm getting crap. And we're all getting crap. And okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
Well, then you have to go to be fair, people talk about artificially influencing the race, but it's are all artificially influenced anyway? For some reason, some way or the other? Because you have regulations, you have to use two different tire compounds. So, that's already artificially changed the thing. You could change it to where you have to use all 3 tire compounds during a race. That could be something interesting. You could ask Pirelli to make it so that the tires even the hardest tire only lasts half the distance, no matter what. but then that can be like a safety issue. I had a shower thought the other day that maybe the rule shouldn't be 2 different tire compounds. Maybe it should be you have to make a green flag pit stop.
Okay.
And that's it. You have to make a green flag pit stop.
That only helps if we have safety cars.
No, it does. But think about that. Like, yes, it does only help if you have safety cars, but that also means that, one, you can go like medium because you've made a green flag pit stop if you wanted to do that. Like, it opens up. I think the problem with, in my opinion, with the current rule set of you have to use 2 different tire compounds is you do kind of force teams onto one strategy, where if you removed, and I understand why they don't want to like bring the tire deg down, because like what they did that in like 2011, 2012, and like people weren't happy about it with like how big the cliff was, and I get it. But the other option there is like, okay, well then move some of the barriers around such a way that like either force the 2 stop by saying like you have to use all 3 tire compounds, or consider like not requiring you to use all like multiple tire compounds and just say you have to make a green flag stop, because that would also, I've made my green flag stop, but now I should do isn't that changes like the safety car math altogether of like, is it worth pitting under the safety car or not? We've also talked so many times on this podcast about how, the safety cars at the one-stop pit window just ruin the race because everybody pit stops under the safety car and then nothing happens. So if you said it's a green flag stop only, then if you everybody that pits under the safety car, that they're stopping again.
I almost feel that instead of trying to futz with the policy around the pit stops themselves, you need to do something to encourage variability in the design of cars. Like at the moment, it's not a spec series, but there is this certain aspect of, even from the very beginning of this set of regulations, they're like, we're going to get closer racing, and you kind of pulled all the cars together, but then you didn't solve the problem of cars actually doing the overtakes in a way that really impacts the race. And I feel there's something in there about that. Like maybe it's that you encourage you give spendable points to the teams on how they choose to adjust their aero or something, and then it changes it by race. So one team goes for one race, like Ferrari would spend all of its points to make sure it wins at its home races, but that means it wouldn't be as good elsewhere. But then you create these gaps so that people are encouraged to try different pit stop maneuvers or something. I don't know. This feels that's what it's more like. So. But the 2-stop didn't work.
No, it didn't at all. And
the closest it had to working was Lewis, who kind of didn't get completely screwed by it, versus the Racing Bulls. But
well, yeah, he would have ended up in the same spot whether he did the 1-stop, the 2-stop, or even a 3-stop, even possibly a 4-stop. Like, yeah.
And then we had Kimi, who spent most of his race in the middle, and then lucked out towards the end, even before the upcoming Ferrari discussion, where he kind of made his way back up again to 8th.
Yeah, but even then, I'd say it's overall a disappointing result for Kimi. We've talked a lot. There's always talk in Formula One about the rain master and who is the best driver in the rain. At this point, and because you've alluded to this off the podcast in watching Formula 2 stuff, if Kimi was only able to really pass in the rain last year. I think at this point, we got to consider Kimi the best rain driver of all time. If he can only pass other cars when it is raining.
Indeed, and we need the weather in Japan to deliver to help us reinforce this belief. We need more data.
Yeah.
Haas had pace. They kind of did in a weird way. They didn't at first.
They had a double points finish with a little bit of help.
But before
still.
Or after the Ferrari help?
I
think it was before.
It depends where Gasly finished, because Gasly also got disqualified.
Yeah. But nonetheless, separate.
Ollie was 8th, so
Ollie did some good overtakes.
Yeah, he was.
He threw a dummy out to Duhan and somebody else. He tried the same dummy on Gasly, but Gasly's been around a bit too long to get picked up with that. So that was pretty good. I'm hopeful that Behrman continues to perform well so that he can stay in F1 and get an opportunity in a real car. He
looks worth it.
Yep. Lando needs to work on his listening. Was he not listening?
Clearly not, because he was. Lando needs a lot. But towards the end of the race, he's like, "Hey, my brake pedal's getting long," and his race engineer is like, "Yeah, you need to like lift and coast a little bit, not brake as much, because this is a problem. This is going to be a problem, but you can mitigate it." And then he was putting in fastest laps trying to catch Oscar, And then on the last lap, he had virtually no braking because it would go all the way to the stop, but not be enough brakes. So George pulled back 3 seconds, and I think if the Sauber wasn't in the way, it could have maybe got to Lando.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
I see what you're saying.
Like, yeah. So, or let's say that happened half a lap earlier. George does get to Lando at that point in time. Like, so we've seen many a time Lando almost throwing away points
Through pig-headedness.
Yeah, and at this point, his race engineer was literally like, hey, man, you need to not do this because it is much better for us to come home second or third than it is to not finish this race. And with how you're driving, we might not finish this race. And they finally got the message of Lando, this is critical. And yeah, so it's just this case of Lando, and I'm sure every F1 driver wants to win every race, but we've talked a lot about how what differentiates Lewis and what started to differentiate Max is they understood that sometimes a second and third is a great result. And great, we got it, we moved on, we scored points, we'll get him next time. And I don't think Lando's figured that out yet, and I think that's one thing that's massively holding him back.
But I think in the case of Lewis, and I think in the case of Max too, it was only after they had won their first championship through being a bit pig-headed at times that they really learnt that. And I don't know if that's for Lando to learn that. Maybe he needs to win the championship by being pig-headed.
Sure, I think in Lewis's case, it's more of he lost the championship by being pig-headed in 2006. Seven. Sorry.
Yeah.
Which, that was some between race drama of people have figured out that Lewis is essentially you could change only 4 races and make Lewis a 11-time world champion.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Because you changed like Spain or China, I think in 2000, pick a race in 2007, Spain or China in 2007, something 2007. 2010, he had a puncture at the Spanish Grand Prix, I think is what it was. And like that cost him like 18 points. He lost the championship by 10.
Okay.
Malaysia 2016 was like a 30-point swing between him and Nico from that weekend, from his engine blowing up. His engine, he was comfortable leading that race. His engine doesn't blow up. He beats Nico Rosberg. And then pick a race in 2021, the Abu Dhabi 2021. Or even Brake Magic in Abu Dhabi. There were not Abu Dhabi, Baku. There were a couple opportunities for Lewis to get those points. But it's interesting you change one race or 4 race results, and Lewis goes from being a 7-time champ to an 11-time champ.
When I get my time machine, I am going back to put my finger on the scales of the universe.
Yeah, of all the things to do, yes. Lewis will suddenly be an 11-time champ. Yeah,
yes.
That's take that. Are you going to prevent Michael from going skiing or have him to wear a helmet?
Yes.
Good.
But then I'm going to lead to the question of, does he come back again, and how does he influence everything after that? This is going to sound really bad. I wouldn't prevent Senna from crashing, because I think Adrian Newey needs to feel the pain of accidentally shaving off the steering shaft.
The only reason I'll come back on that one, well, for some reason I also got the Newey clip again of like him talking about Senna, and he's like, it wasn't the steering column, it was maybe something on the suspension or something else.
Still his.
No, yeah. Oh, no, he knows it was the air balance. But to be fair, at least he feels remorse for it, unlike Frank Williams, who didn't.
Well, that's typical of Frank Williams.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the rookies on the grid and apparently being unable to cause a crash?
Yeah, we have a quarter of the grid being rookies. 6 people if you count Fernando Alonso as a rookie.
Yeah, fair point.
Which they all did in a preseason roundtable. They were like, "Oh, we need Fernando as well. He's also a rookie."
Well, if you include Fernando, he did cause a safety car in Australia.
That's true. It's true. Fernando's doing a great job amongst the rookies. But we have all these rookies on the grid. They're racing each other close, and we can't get a safety car in the last 20 laps in order to like spice things up a little bit. Come on, guys. Race harder. Screw it up.
Flavio Briatore.
Yeah. The driver bars today are way too high. These rookies are coming in way too well and getting way too much sim time and stuff, and they know how to handle these heavy cars. And it's just... See, if we had lighter, smaller cars, they would be a little less predictable, and they might go slapping into the side of each other, and it'd be great.
I love it. Let's do it. Lance, we haven't talked about Lance yet.
Lance was a real pain in the ass for the front runners during their pit stops, and it was amazing, and I loved it. And I liked the fact that he just wasn't letting them go by. He was racing every one of them, and I'm sure he ticked all of them off, and it was fantastic.
It was. I'm disappointed that we like Lance. We're going to have to change the narrative for this episode.
Well, also, I was rooting for George on the last lap of the race to catch Lando, so I don't know what this whole season's about anyway.
How
come on,
dare,
you weren't?
No,
you weren't?
No. I was rooting for Max to catch. Was he in fourth? Where was Max?
Fifth.
I was rooting for him to catch somebody, to get somebody at the end.
He was fourth. My apologies.
I was rooting for Max to get George.
The gap was too big. The gap was too big to George, so. which is why the allegiance switched to go George, go get Lando.
Okay. Shall we talk about Ferrari? Before we get into it and we get distracted for ourselves, I think it might make sense for those who are less aficionados of Formula One, if you could break down the mistakes that Ferrari made in this race.
First of all, I just have to say, I love seeing Lewis in a Ferrari. Lewis looks great in a Ferrari. The yellow helmet with the red Ferrari is just so perfect. It seems like the match we always needed and didn't know we needed.
We just need better car performance.
Yeah. Well, at this point, we need to make sure our scales are correct before we do anything. All right, so much about Ferrari. First off, Charles, I'm not convinced these front wing end plates do anything because in this whole new season, or whole formula since we've had them, they seem to help more times they get knocked off than they hurt.
Yes. Everybody who gets one knocked off drives around and usually drives better than they would have driven otherwise.
With less tire wear. Yes. It's weird. I don't know what's... Yeah.
At this point, just take them off. What can you do as an aero designer within the regulations to not have front wing end plates?
Just make them just pop off as soon as you hit a certain speed.
No, we've accidentally got flexi wing.
There's debris. Yeah. We've proven in our docs that everything else is structurally sound. Just these front wing end plates just don't last. Put little parachutes on them just so they go flying away immediately. Yeah. So. But Lewis was honestly doing a good job on the pace, and then after the pit stops, he was starting to close in on George, and I know he made a comment of that he was struggling, but then he was starting to close in on George, and Ferrari did the thing where, let's switch our drivers around, and they're always, and at this point in time, everything was trending towards the one stop. We knew it was trending towards the one stop. You had time to just wait and see if Lewis is going to catch George, because what ends up happening, and I swear happens every single time Ferrari swaps drivers, is the driver who was in front or behind doesn't make any progress on the driver who the previous driver was making progress on. And then the other driver gets so screwed in the wash off the Ferrari or having to change their pace and maybe having to go to a dirty part of the track that they lose a second and a half a lap time for the next lap or so before suddenly they can drive again. But then but now nobody's making inroads on everybody. So cool, we've done nothing except swap drivers around. And at this point in time, Charles' car was underweight, Lewis was getting too much on his skid block, and both ended up disqualified. Hooray. Also, you told a 7-time world championship to get out of the way? What the hell?
Well, but Lewis did offer the whole car swap was Lewis offered it up. He says, I'm struggling. I think we should let Charles through. And I think he should be lauded for that. The problem is that Ferrari'd it. Ferrari didn't go, okay, let's do this at the next 3 turns or whatever it would be, right? Instead, what they did is they went and thought about it and then came back too late and said, can you do it at turn 14? By which time Lewis was dealing with a bunch of other stuff and Charles was still there but not quite there. And then he gets through and then they're like, can you why can't you do it? You should do the thing. And then Charles dropped back and was no longer close, so that now Lewis would have to slow down. It was ridiculous. And then finally it comes up later, and I still don't know quite what was said. But they said, now you should change it. And I think Lewis said, I'll tell you when we're going to go and change. And it just was come on, people. It started with good intent and ended up being a Ferrari issue. Typical
Ferrari.
Yeah, my hopium is running low. My copium is definitely running low.
After the sprint race, I would have thought it got a refill.
It did, and then they drained it in this one. But then this whole disqualification, I'm just what were you doing, people? And apparently Lewis is upset that they found out that they'd raised his ride height. Because it kind of devalues his win, because it looks a little bit like he was cheating.
Fair. Yeah, so the race was at midnight for us. and I watched it first thing in the morning, and I did a good job of shutting off my phone from social media. So it's like, all right, race is over. Disqualification. Double disqualification. And then also Pierre Gasly got disqualified for being underweight. Man, the scales in China, man, they were off.
Maybe they were just more accurate than everywhere else.
Maybe. I don't know how your car's underweight. That seems like such an easy thing of like, all right, let's just check this real quick. Yep, okay, that's a weight. Let's put fuel in it.
For it to have happened twice in less than 12 months in 2 different teams, people are thinking about this wrong.
3 different teams.
3 different, that's a good point. 3 different teams. It's like, people, really? What are you doing?
And we talked when George got disqualified at Belgium, which Drive to Survive did not cover, that in Spa, you just kind of turn right into the pit lane and there's no chance to go around and pick up rubber. You had a really long lap at China to go pick up rubber. So, come on, Charles. Pick up rubber.
What was he doing? He's been too moved.
He needs to play the Cody's Formula 1 game because Jeff tells you to pick up rubber on your way into the pit. Yeah, he's got to play more of that.
He should. So Ferrari this in the most Ferrari way possible. And I just have so many questions. You made a point last week that Ferrari were Ferrarying too hard because they thought it was their one and only opportunity to win the championship, and I suggested that Fred that maybe thought he'd had control, didn't have control. It's clear he doesn't have control because if they're doing dumb shit like this, like, come on, people.
Yeah, he needs they need Atlassian to improve their systems. Yes. HP and IBM are not the answer.
Yeah, IBM will have a committee, which actually feels extremely Ferrari. Yeah. Do we have any more to say about Ferrari?
I don't know. Committee at Ferrari seems weird, but I understand what you mean.
It feels like they stand around and have a conversation discussing passionately with the fingers. We are got to take over the car, etc., etc. But it feels very on brand.
It feels like maybe they have too big of a committee. Because if you have like a small committee, you can actually make like some good ideas. But if you have too big of a committee, you make a camel, and they're making camels. And they need to be making prancing horses.
I'm going to say this in a strange way. When you have a small group of people who are each individually responsible and they come together to come up with the right idea and move forward, it's not a committee. It's just a group of people working together. When you get a bunch of people who come together and bellyache about a bunch of crap all the time, talking about it, and everybody's got their own axe to grind and they're not pulling in the same direction, that's a committee.
I miss working for our former employer.
Yeah, it's great. Committees, they make everything worse. Driver of the day?
My driver of the day was Ollie Chow Behrman, or... possibly Alex, birthday boy, and tire whisperer, Albon.
I think I would allow the Ollie. I'm not sure about Albon. I think Albon just Albon.
Yeah, but so there was a lot of... This was kind of the first times we saw him directly versus Sainz, given Sainz didn't put him to the wall on lap 1. And everybody was like, oh, Sainz is just going to wipe the floor with Alex because Alex isn't that great of a driver. And Alex is showing like, no, Alex is a really good driver deserving of his Formula 1 drive. Like...
It's just because Alex has had 3 seasons to get used to the team, and Carlos, when he's adjusted, it will be fine.
Is that the same exclusives we give Lewis?
Yes.
Okay. And then my driver who couldn't wait for it to be over was the Racing Bulls driver because more like not Racing Bulls. Ha! Zing! Got him. 2 stops are terrible. They're at the back of the field. Come on, guys.
They did show good driver performance, so
they did.
Liam should be.
I gotta think Isaac's going right into that seat because they just won't put Yuki in.
No, Yuki's going to Aston when Fernando retires. My driver of the day was Hajar because I think he actually had a really good race. I think for his actual first real race, I think he showed good performance, good experience.
He's lucky that half class of rain didn't pop up at the end.
Oh yeah, he'd have been backwards straight into the wall with a ball of flame. I think it does continue. I think his good performance is a great example of it's not about winning F2.
Yeah.
So
it's
my
about
driver,
proving you can do F2 well enough.
Yeah. My driver who couldn't wait for it to be over was Alonso. So much so that he just faked his brake failure so he could go home early.
Yeah, that seemed like the cop-out pick. I was going to do that one as well, but it seemed like, well, he actually ended his day early. So I usually try to go for classified drivers.
True. You raise an interesting point. I couldn't think of anybody else who kind of wanted it to be over. Maybe Hulk and Bortoletto because they have terrible cars.
The back half of the race was just kind of dull. I think they all kind of wanted it to be over.
Yeah, they were all, everybody was
except
just
maybe Oscar because Oscar was winning.
Championship watch.
It's close. It's but it should be close this early in the season. But I think it's like 10 points between like first and fifth or something like that. First and fourth.
Oh yeah, it's real time. real time.
So, I think we really don't have the real question on the championship watch is going to be after McLaren can no longer use their flexi wing.
They're just going to have the end plates fall off so that you can have a flexi wing and make excuses. That's why it worked for Ferrari, and Charles was so good today because he basically had a flexi wing.
Yeah, but I'm saying like that'll be the real judge of.
Yep.
I think we'll know by then how the championship is trending, if Ferrari can remember how to race cars, if Red Bull can develop their way out of all their problems.
Yeah.
If Mercedes is a little bit better. Because right now it does look like McLaren's to win.
It does look a bit like that, or maybe the way to say it is Lando's to lose.
No, I chose my words very carefully because with how Oscar raced today...
I love Oscar. He seems like such a nice, gentle person, so I'm waiting for something bad to come out about him.
Which does a great job of taking me into spicy takes and rumors.
But before we go there, we just need to note the highest placed Ferrari-powered driver is Esteban Ocon in the championship. This is ridiculous.
Well, he hasn't been DNF'd at all.
Yeah, true. Anyway, spicy takes and rumors.
McLaren keep asking Oscar to help Lando, but never ask Lando to help Oscar.
Is that true, though?
So, in Australia... Oscar was told to hold position behind Lando, not to attack Lando. And then during this race, when Oscar was leading, he was told to help drag Lando further clear of George Russell.
Yes, but there were 2 races last year where they asked Lando to do a solid for Oscar, and he did. And that's excluding the whole Hungary situation. One was Baku, where they asked Lando to hold up Charles, Perez, Max, one of them, so that there was enough of a gap so that Piastri could get in and out of his pit stop cleanly, and Lando did it with nary a complaint. And then there was another one, and I want to say, I can't remember where it was.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the 2025 season.
Okay, we're scoping it to the 2 data sets. Okay,
yeah,
fair point.
Because they didn't think they had a shot at winning the title until like way too late last year when they should have been on it more often.
I'll subscribe to that.
So, but now, because even Zach Brown's been like, the Lando Norris era is here. He's not even saying the McLaren era, he's saying the Lando Norris era is here. So he is all about, wanting it to be Lando, not Oscar.
That makes sense.
Because Lando is a driver he developed versus Oscar falling into his lap with Alpine screwing up.
Yeah, good job, Alpine. Radios need to be banned?
Yeah, mostly I'm just upset that people keep telling Oscar to help out Lando in some ways.
Okay.
And Ferrari trying to swap their drivers around terribly. And at least you have a pit board that you can tell people all about things on the pit wall board.
So you're not just saying the broadcast of the radios, you're saying driver to pit wall communication should be banned.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That is a great example of what they should do is they should use sprint races to try things out. And they should try this out in sprint race.
The other way you could go is only drivers can communicate with the pit wall. So you could say things like, tires are shot, I want to box this lap, sort of thing. And then maybe, or what do you think about boxing this lap? And then you have to go to the pit wall and it says, stay out like +3 or something.
Oh, so you got to make your call 2 laps in advance.
Yeah. You got to do something. Like
I can subscribe to that.
Yeah. Or everybody's on the same radio channel.
I have thought about that a number of times. And I kind of like it. The variation I've often had in my head is when you're physically close to another driver.
Proximity chat?
Proximity chat. And I think that would also be a great idea because then I think, Behrman, as he's going past Doohan, can be like, ciao. And Doohan can be like,
I would just love for one driver to scream at another driver right as they were in a braking zone, causing them to miss the braking zone.
Yes! Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Predictions for Japan?
Oscar continues to outshine Lando. Fernando Alonso DNFs with a safety car. And Max on the podium, but not first.
I can subscribe to all of those. I think the Fernando one seems a little bit unlikely, but we'll see.
Well, we need a little bit. I can't just say the race will be in Japan. It'll be over the amount of laps the Japanese Grand Prix is, although that didn't happen in the previous Japanese Grand Prix. I almost did one about the cherry blossoms, but I think it might be a little late for cherry blossom talk.
Because it's too late for the cherry blossoms. They're usually like late March, right?
Yeah, but this is early April, and they don't last too long.
True. And they've been getting earlier and earlier every year because of global warming. Anyway, my predictions for Japan. Lawson will be in the seat in Japan because he will have negotiated hard to say, look, I know this track. I can show my best. He'll be then terrible because the previously reasons we have discussed. And only then will he be fired categorically, like they fired Nick de Vries in a truly humiliating race. And then the two Ferrari drivers are going to crash hard into each other. Not necessarily out of malfeasance, nothing like, whatever, but something's going to happen and then it's going to bang into each other and take each other out.
I mean, they hit each other softly this weekend.
I know. Touching me softly with his nose. Something, 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 something.
Well, as always, we're waiting for your feedback, and if you want to tell Dominic just how bad that singing was, please write in at feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com and let us know your conspiracy theories, feedbacks, and wants. Also, don't forget to tell your friends to like, listen, rate, and subscribe. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for the Japanese Grand Prix.
Laters.
Bye. I like that all my years of band have been useful just for the fact that I can tell you when you clap too early when we record our silly podcast.
I was banned from participating in musical events because I have absolutely no rhythm.